This is a time to lead this city in coming together, not a moment to try and score the very points that turn so many New Yorkers away from politics.
He was part of this defund the police movement. He has said that the police are a threat to public safety.
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One investigative reporter Courtney Gross. The deadliest shooting in 25 years in Manhattan occurred this week when a Las Vegas resident entered an office building on Park Avenue and shot multiple people with an automatic weapon, including a New York City cop. A tragedy with political ramifications for the race for mayor, and we'll discuss. And then the state's Office of Cannabis Management botched the oversight of legal weed shops yet again. This time, dozens of stores are too close to schools. A miscalculation the office says it made. What does this mean for the troubled agency? And to discuss that, we have our resident weed extraordinaire, except we say product, right? We don't say that.
Weed expert?
Sure.
Extraordinaire?
You can't say product extraordinaire because that's weird.
Yeah.
Bobby Cuza.
Expert. I covered the cannabis industry rollout, but I think I've done like one cannabis story in the past couple years. Bernadette Hogan actually has been stealing my thunder as of late.
Yeah, Bobby, listen, I'll take the reins from here on this story. No, I'm kidding. It's actually a crazy development in all of this, so we can talk about it more.
All right, so put that on hold for now. Before we get to that, let's talk about the shooting that occurred in Manhattan this week. Obviously, like I said in the intro, the deadliest shooting we've seen in decades. Multiple people died when a gunman from Las Vegas entered this office building on Park Avenue, where he basically sprayed the lobby with bullets, then went up to, the 33rd floor, shot another person up there, and then eventually turned the gun on himself. And this has been an investigation that's been occurring since it occurred earlier this week. The NYPD sent detectives out to Las Vegas to try to find out what exactly the motive was here. Bobby, you were on set Monday night for many, many hours when this was occurring. So I know I just got us up to speed a little bit, but is there anything else our listeners should know preliminarily about what happened?
No, I mean, honestly, the story is pretty straightforward. I mean, I think people know the basic outline that you just described. The guy drove from Las Vegas.
Shane Tamura
has been identified by police as the gunman. So, he gets in a BMW in Las Vegas, drives cross country, comes into Manhattan, double parks, and then comes in to this building at 345 Park Avenue with this assault rifle, shoots up the lobby, and then, like you said, up to the 33rd floor, shot someone there before turning it on himself. I mean, I think at this point, we're recording this on Thursday, a lot of the investigation, I think, has been done. I mean, obviously, there's still a lot there's still things that we don't know, but the motive, I think, is pretty clear and became clear, within hours from the suicide note that he left. I did a story on this on Tuesday. He makes clear that he doesn't necessarily make clear. I think it's clear from the notes that the NFL headquarters, which are in that building, were his target, because in the note, he talks about the fact that he believes he had CTE, which is a degenerative brain disease. I think people are probably familiar with at this point because it has been so closely linked with football and with other contact sports. We don't know for sure that he had CTE. We may learn that based on the autopsy. It's still sort of unclear to me if the city medical examiner is going to be able to determine that conclusively. I
think if you look at, I was watching some other networks where if you look at someone's brain imaging you can only diagnose this, I think, post-mortem.
Yes.
And if you look at their brain imaging, you can see the deterioration. I'm pretending I'm a doctor here now, but you can see the deterioration in certain cortexes of the brain, which show this kind of degenerative,
yeah.
Yeah.
And, he believes that he developed it from his football career. He played high school football. But the issue is that the NFL, and he specifically in his note references and quotes from this documentary on Frontline, PBS Frontline, that aired in 2013, that specifically, the whole documentary, I've watched parts of it. The whole thing is an indictment of the NFL and the way that they've handled head injuries over the years. They downplayed is a soft way of putting it. They did not acknowledge the link between concussions and, other blows to the head that you experience playing football with brain disease. And so, they have come under a lot of criticism over the years. There's been lawsuits, and, it may be that he was sort of radicalized by watching this and doing research into the topic. So that seems to have clearly been the motive. The thing is, he walked into this building and just starts shooting in the lobby indiscriminately, and then ends up on the 33rd floor, which is not where the NFL headquarters are even located. There was an NFL employee who was shot and wounded, but that employee seemed to have just been in the lobby at the time. So it was premeditated, but obviously, if the NFL was his target, he didn't
Mess
do
up the floor. I
he didn't do a very good job of mapping this out.
Mayor Adams, I think, said that it was on the 3rd floor and that potentially he went to the wrong elevator bank.
Right. So what's interesting here is, so a couple days ago, we had one of the top officers on New York One to talk about what happened. And I was talking to him, and he said, watching the video from inside of the building itself, which he said, of all my years as being a police officer, it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. I hope this never, ever gets released. But basically, this guy sprays the front, right, the entranceway. And as he's trying to get to the elevator bay there, and multiple elevators, right, because it's a massive skyscraper. So you click on one of my friends works in the building, and he said, listen, there's certain elevators that only go to specific floors, right? So you have to pick which elevator to go into. But there's guards that are right around the elevator situation.
One of the security guards was killed.
One of the security guards was killed. And apparently, this is what one of the cops said, one of the security guards either tried to distract or tried to get around to try to defend and deflect this guy from getting into one of the elevators, which then distracted the gunman. The gunman got into the wrong elevator. And by the time he got up to the 33rd floor, he realized he was on the wrong floor. And then up there, he also indiscriminately just started firing his rifle, which ended up also striking and killing a woman up there. I believe another person was hit on that floor, and then he turned the gun on himself.
Oh, and also worth mentioning, he shot himself in the chest.
Right, not in the head.
And asked that his brain be studied, which is the same thing that's happened to NFL players. I mean, there's a couple of NFL players who did the same thing. They killed themselves in the chest so that their brains could be studied because they believed that they had CTE.
And we believe that the chief medical officer or medical examiner's office is going to take a look at his brain.
Yeah, they've said something to that extent. So
do we know if he had a concussion ever or any concussion?
There was some reporting.
Injuries?
There's been some interviews of these people he played high school with.
Right.
And this was around 2014, 2015. He attended 2 different high schools in California before moving to Las Vegas, I believe. And from that reporting, it shows there was some reporting that he had some concussions. He was a star running back, I believe. I'm not that well.
Also, you don't always know. You don't always know if you have a concussion, and B, you may not even tell anyone, right? Like even his coach may have not known that he'd had concussions.
Which is why also with the NFL being in the spotlight here, they emphasize player safety, but like at the end of the day, football, when you're playing, obviously I didn't play football, but like it's rife with these kinds of injuries, massive, contact, even though you have helmets and you have pads, but like this is a huge problem the NFL has had to contend with. And it just seems, again, maybe this kid was radicalized and something else happened. But, the NFL did release a statement yesterday, I believe, which was kind of late, addressing this. But, I didn't really hear anything new from them, especially talking about the specifics of what this guy was talking about in, the what was it, his note that he left behind.
And obviously mental illness.
Yeah, huge. There was some psychiatric
right.
medication, which I was surprised they even disclosed. But I guess, I was thinking it violated HIPAA. But I guess if someone's deceased, perhaps they don't care about HIPAA. But right after the shooting, the police commissioner said that there was psychiatric medication that was found in his car that he had double parked outside the building. And then since then, they've searched his apartment and found additional psychiatric medication. So clearly, and there's a history here with the the Las Vegas Police Department of some sort of mental health calls. I just want to highlight, obviously, this is one of the desks, there were 4 in total: a security guard, a woman who worked for Blackstone, the financial firm, a woman who worked for Rudin Management, and then obviously the police officer. Didarul Islam, his funeral is being held today. He was a police officer for a little bit under 4 years. And prior to that, he was a public safety school officer, Bangladeshi descent.
Bangladeshi immigrant, actually. Yeah.
And father of 2.
And at the time, he was in uniform, but he actually wasn't on duty. He was essentially working private security.
So they have, the police officers can do this to make more money, is work at private firms, and they get paid a little bit extra. It's a common practice that the NYPD has had for a while. And I think this raises the profile, in addition to it being a mass shooting in New York City, which we don't see very often.
25 years?
Yeah. I was thinking back to, I believe Juve a couple of years ago had a number of people shot, but this is the deadliest, right? That we've seen so many people, so many fatalities as a result of it. And it started this conversation, especially from the governor and the mayor, more from the governor, I would honestly say, about, a national assault weapons ban, because we obviously have the SAFE Act that was passed under Andrew Cuomo in 2013?
Or 2015, I can't remember.
Around there, early in the 2010s, and that bans assault weapons in New York State, high capacity magazines. It did grandfather in some who already had assault weapons. They were allowed to have them, keep them, and register them. But it had the strongest gun laws in the country is how that it is defined and how Andrew Cuomo talks about it. And, Kathy Hochul is now out there saying, Congress, you need to act because we have the strongest gun laws in the country. The people that come here and do these shootings, like whether it's the Brooklyn subway guy or this particular incident, they're buying these guns and obtaining these guns from out of state. And then they come here and then they commit mass murder.
Yeah, we've banned assault weapons. There's no high-capacity magazines. But as long as other states do it and someone can cross our state lines by simply getting into a vehicle, we are not safe. And if every state on their own followed what we're doing, they could also claim to be safe states.
And there was a national ban on assault weapons under Clinton, I believe.
1994.
Right. And then it lapsed when Bush was in office. Who knows why? But I mean,
because the NRA was so powerful at the time.
Either way, it's been decades since we've had a national assault rifle ban, I guess. And that's also just the prime problem with the NYPD always talks about with stats, illegal guns coming into New York. They're not legally permitted guns that people have. It's just the pipeline is just so prolific, and it's easy to get guns in other states without a mental health check, without, really, in some cases, really any background check.
I feel like Kathy Hochul's out there talking about Congress to act. We don't really expect Congress to act, particularly at this moment, obviously. But it does, I think this incident kind of shapes the mayor's race a little bit. I mean, I hate to take a tragedy and turn it around to politics, but that's what we're here doing, sitting at this table. It's kind of our job, right? So I'm wondering what you guys think the political ramifications are. I mean, Zoran Madani for this was obviously in Uganda still. I was told by his people that he tried to change his flight, but there's not many flights leaving from Uganda. So he came back when he did. He had a press conference this week as soon as he came back, right? Bern, you were there. What did he say?
So he said that he mentioned the governor twice. He said, I agree with her in calling for a national ban on assault rifles. Very complimentary towards the governor's approach there. But then he also said he was woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning, his time in Uganda, by a staffer. And initially, Mamdani put out a statement which appeared dated upon immediate arrival, where he, Bobby and I were both on the desk, and we had already known and confirmed that Officer Islam had died. But Mamdani put out a statement saying, we're praying for this officer in critical condition. So Mamdani, dated information coming out, but he spoke on Wednesday. He was at 32 BJ. He spoke with the brother of one of the security officers, Smith Etienne, the brother of Alan Etienne, who was killed.
Well, and he'd visited the family of the officer first, right?
That too, right. So he gets off the plane at 7:30 in the morning, gets off at JFK, goes immediately to Officer Islam's family and stays with them for over an hour. He said the family wouldn't let him leave before he had breakfast with them. They invited Mamdani to the family and friends portion of the funeral today. Wow. I don't know yet if he ended up going to that portion, but the close family and friend portion. And another thing too is Mamdani is Muslim, Officer Islam is Muslim, and the family is as well. So this also adds like an additional tie here because, if Mamdani's elected, he would be the first Muslim mayor in New York. And it's also an important point for him because his past stance, a reform stance on the NYPD and policing, has come into question in light of this shooting. obviously throughout the Democratic primary race, but he has passed statements saying that the NYPD is racist, making fun of cops, certain tweets saying, oh, I just saw a cop.
He said dismantle the NYPD.
Right, he said dismantle the NYPD. He really had to backpedal when he came out with his policing strategy. He wants to not defund the police. He wants to keep policing at a certain level, which at this point is under, I guess, under the level that they should be or they would like to be, right? But he says he wants to create a new Department of Community Safety, which yesterday he actually detailed what duties the NYPD already handles. So his disagreement is NYPD handles too many mental health cases. He wants to bring it over into a place where social workers and other workers can take the load off of, instead of allowing cops solely to respond to these cases.
I mean, I've done a lot of reporting on that. It's really complicated.
Really complicated.
Like, it's just
also what
something
cases
can turn real fast.
What cases do you determine? I mean, he gave a list, and the two that stuck out to me were hate crimes and victims services would go under the branch of this new Department of Community Safety or Services, whatever the name is, which is really hate crimes, domestic violence cases could be extremely violent. And do people want cops there who can, handle an aggressive person, regardless if they have mental health issues or what the situation is? Or do they want, a tiny social worker that looks like me or you? Not Bobby, though. Bobby's buff. but legitimately, like, how this would be made up under Mamdani administration is really going under the microscope at this moment, because you have Mayor Adams who's standing with Commissioner Tisch and a former cop able to handle the situation, saying, listen, I know what it's like to go through this and to be in those situations. And you have Mamdani who previously said dismantle the NYPD. So it really puts a political light on this moment.
But he distanced himself even yesterday from the defund rhetoric, right? And
he has though throughout the campaign and since, he has said, listen, I don't believe in that anymore. He said, look, going back to 2020, he was talking about a specific unit, the SRG, which
Strategic Response Group, which is, response to protests. These are the guys that, initially when they came out, they were only wearing black. They were, they didn't even, you couldn't even tell if they were cops. They were responding to protests, the anti-terrorism stuff. And they're seen as a very harsh unit, controversial and harsh unit, the way their tactics are.
Right, and that really came under the microscope during the George Floyd protests, and lawsuits tied to, violation of civil rights came out of that. But Mamdani yesterday, he said, listen, the SRG responded to the shooting on Monday in the way that they should have, in the message and the mind that they originally were formed to do, to be this special tactical unit going in and handling very serious cases. He said, listen, back in 2022, I was really frustrated looking at these protests and seeing how the SRG was responding. And that's where the distinction is of my criticism. But then he was asked, well, would you disband this unit? And he said yes. And he would reform the unit and maybe another unit in a different measure, in a different light. But he did say he would disband that unit again based off of past
we're seeing Adams and even other Republicans, honestly, Elise Stefanik was using this as an opportunity to bring up the defund the movement.
She might be running for governor.
I mean, part of me initially, and we are all cynical political reporters, initially...
Speak for yourself.
And even on Monday night, Bern and I were on set, during the live coverage of the shooting, and I was reluctant to even, discuss the political ramifications. But then on Tuesday, Andrew Cuomo comes out and gives all these interviews bashing Mamdani. So clearly, the candidates themselves are trying to turn this into a political issue. So, and Mamdani, sort of had to defend himself.
Yesterday.
And, there are legitimate questions, right? Mamdani is the front runner. And the question is, can he handle a crisis like this, right? He's never been an executive.
He's never managed more than a handful of people.
Right. And then, and he has to manage the NYPD at a time when they're in mourning over a fallen officer.
Right.
And Mamdani, though, again, right, he visited the family of Officer Islam. He said while he did not speak to Mayor Adams, he did speak to Commissioner Tisch briefly, which, again, and he spoke, I can't remember if he said he spoke to the governor, but he is just the Democratic mayoral nominee at this point. How would he have handled, I wanted to ask him, how would you have handled this situation? But, clearly this is all hypotheticals.
I also feel like with an active shooter situation, it's like the NYPD is like somewhat of a well-oiled machine when it comes to stuff like this.
They
like,
know the
know
FBI, the state police
would be like putting his thumb on the scale, being like, "This is how you should be entering this building," or it's at some
That's why you have top brass. That's why you have a commissioner that can speak and act with the use of or with the voice of the mayor, right?
And then you mentioned Mayor Adams. This is a chance for Mayor Adams to demonstrate leadership, right?
Sure.
And he was out there on Monday night at the news conference, obviously showing some emotion as he, he's a former cop. We've seen this before. I mean, there was 2 cops shot his first month in office, which he still talks about all the time. So, the mayor, I think this is a chance for him, not explicitly, right, but to show that he can lead the city through crisis. But I mean, on Monday night, we were talking about is this become a political issue in the race? I don't know that the incident itself is something that people are going to focus on, because this was such a anomaly, right? This was a mass shooting. The guy comes from Las Vegas. It's not like a street crime, and like there's no way that the mayor or the NYPD could have done anything to stop this, right? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But this is not. I don't think this is something that reflects on the NYPD or public policy or something that can now be legislated,
unless Congress were to act, which we all know is like a very slim possibility. I was just, last thought is, there are some new super PACs that have formed in the past couple of days that are planning, one of which is like tied to a former lieutenant governor and Ray Kelly. And I was on the phone with, one of them this week talking about this new super PAC, how much they were going to raise, what their plan was. And one of the arguments, they were like, look at what just happened this week. Like, who do you want to lead the city? I think you're going to see the wealthy, the well-to-do, the business class, the real estate community, which do not want to get Mamdani, do not want to see Mamdani take office, use this as a way to try to pivot the conversation away from affordability and to public safety. And obviously, I think Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams would love for the conversation in the general election to be about public safety and not affordability.
Yeah. But these super PACs, I mean, reading about it, there's like 5 at least
it's
now.
Like they're popping up one a day.
Right. I mean, my initial reaction to that is, there were millions and millions of dollars spent against Mamdani in the primary by these outside groups, and it obviously didn't work. So, I mean, the idea, it's surprising to me that some people in the real estate community and other segments of the city would think that spending millions of dollars of ads now on anti-Mamdani ads is going to work any better than it did in June. But, who knows? I mean, it's a different, the general election is a different beast than the primary.
You have more people engaged, more independents, and Republicans can weigh in too.
Different pool of voters.
Different pool of voters.
Okay, let's leave it there for now. When we get back, for our podcast listeners, we're going to take a short break. For our YouTube listeners, stay right there. We are going to talk about this botched rollout again by the state's
continued
cannabis
botched
agency.
rollout.
So we'll be right back.
So many of them, their life savings are going to these businesses. They've worked hard to go through the lengthy process to be licensed and then to have a location. So I have said we're going to stand up for them. These are entrepreneurs, they're small business owners, many from communities of color, and this is their shot to have a chance to be successful.
Okay, so we got this letter earlier this week, Bern. You were covering it this week, so I'll let you take the lead on this. And it said this agency, the Office of Cannabis Management, had miscalculated how close some of these marijuana shops, what do we call them? I don't know. I don't smoke marijuana, so I don't know.
Cannabis dispensaries, I think is the proper
right?
name.
I don't even have one near my house. Anyway, this is
probably
besides the point. I don't think so.
In Rockaway, I'm sure you do.
There's one, but it's like by Bob's house, not my house. It's a different part of Rockaway. Anyway.
For our listeners.
Because everybody cares about our producer is rolling his eyes. Stop talking about Rockaway. Moving on. Okay, so the marijuana shops, dispensaries, the places where you buy pot, too close to schools. They're supposed to be 500 feet.
Yeah.
And churches.
Churches and schools.
Why churches?
It goes in line with like the state's blue laws, right? In line with alcohol shops, liquor stores, and bars. Jesus Christ. But and then also they can't be within 1,000 feet of another legal cannabis dispensary. So the rules are specific because, again,
500 and 1,000.
500 and 1,000.
Okay,
But
got it.
what we're quibbling over right now, what the state is taking issue with, is the 500-foot rule because. First of all, it was already a mess the way that the Office of Cannabis Management has been operating or trying to operate, right? Since it finally was formed and took effect after the state legalized cannabis, which it passed in a standalone bill, right? Andrew Cuomo signed it.
2021, I think.
2021. I mean, I was there, so I should know, but I'm bad at numbers and math. But and then Governor
time,
Kathy,
apparently.
and time apparently. I'm like, what year is it? But Governor Kathy Hochul was kind of, she had to really pull this together and appoint people to the cannabis board and formulate and hire people that would begin this brand new cannabis industry. So over the past couple of years, though, there's been a complete overhaul of the executive board. And it seems like there's some blame over the former people, and the new people are saying, well, we're wiping the slate clean. We've got it under control.
Well, and by the way, I mean, just I think the important detail in the story is that all of these locations had already been approved.
Yeah.
But they mismeasured. They now say they mismeasured how they measured the 500 feet. And instead of being from door to door, like from the front door of the school to the front door of the dispensary, they should have been measuring to the nearest point of the property line.
Which is insane because it's like, the property line of a school versus where the front door is. So I was with this one business owner in the Bronx the other day, and he said, here's the front door of our shop. Over there is the property line of the school, but their front door is all the way around the corner. So, we're probably now less than 500 feet away, but we were a little over 500 feet away if we're measuring from the door. And it really does make a difference when you're siting and you're deciding where to open your storefront, because again, if it could be 5 storefronts away that makes the difference, these businesses need to know. So anyway, so okay, back it all up. What happened is on Monday, the Office of Cannabis Management sends out an email to over 152 open shops throughout the state, including 89 in New York City, and then applicants who have gone through the whole rigmarole of getting licensing agreements, figuring out a storefront, coming up with a business plan, whatever, sending it to the state. They send this letter to 152 people saying, listen, actually, you're in violation of the law, but of no fault of their own, because the state reassessed the way that they count and measure where something can open. So they had initially been...
Well, they didn't necessarily reassess. They just messed it up in the beginning.
Though. They did reassess because they had put out... The law itself, one could argue it's slightly murky, but the way that they assessed this was the door-to-door. They put out regulations. They had public comment period that said, we're going to do what the SLA, the State Liquor Authority, does. We're gonna monitor and measure by the front door to the front door of the affected location, church, mosque, school, whatever. And now they're going back because last year they did a big, the Office of General Services did a big assessment of how cannabis management was operating and how effective they were, ineffective they were,
Mostly ineffective, right?
Mainly ineffective.
It was bad. I remember the stories about it. I think Bobby was doing them. Like, it was not a good review of the agency.
Again, a complete mess, costing private business owners and their investors millions of dollars. Like, I cannot overemphasize enough. I just got off the phone with one guy who goes, honestly, we've had our license for 2 years. We were delayed in opening because there was an injunction that was filed that said we couldn't open. This was 2 years ago. We had already been out like hundreds of thousands of dollars with investing into the stores, hiring employees, couldn't open, ordering product that was going bad. He goes, now...
Does pot go bad?
Yes, it's like crops. Like if I'm ordering hay for my horse, alfalfa. No, this is a legitimate concern. Like if I'm ordering alfalfa and it's not fresh and there's mold in it.
Okay.
Same difference with.
Okay. You don't want to smoke mold. Got it.
Right. You don't want to smoke mold, and depending on what, if it comes in droplets, if it comes in gummies, whatever, just depends. So the buds, like it's really the little guys that we're concerned with. But anyway, so. This one business owner goes, I had an investment meeting with some potential investors that was canceled just yesterday because these investors are like, the New York market is too volatile. What? He's like, oh, this impacts so much. So anyway, so the state provides this information to these affected businesses on Monday, and then these businesses get a call from a person saying, hey, I'm so-and-so from Cannabis Management. One person said the guy wouldn't say his last name, wouldn't say his title, didn't give a callback number, said, oh yeah, you can email this random email. And these businesses are like, okay. But now they're seeking potentially filing a lawsuit against the state saying, hey, we've been tax-paying businesses for the past 2 years, and now you guys messed up and we can't operate. But what the governor and the state's trying to do is convince the legislature to make a change that grandfathers in these affected businesses, lets them stay open in the location where they are because they've been going on for so long. But like, you know, the legislature, there's no guarantee. You got
They're not even in session, right?
They're not
have to
even
come
in
back for a
session.
special session.
You have to convince over 200 members. Governor Hochul is in an election year.
Yeah.
Is she going to use political capital on fixing this situation? I mean, yeah, the legislature's Democratic run, but like they've got other priorities too.
Yeah, but on the other hand, these are small businesses.
They are
that
small
would
businesses.
I mean, this would be ruinous for all these, small business owners who played by the rules, did all the right thing, invested their life savings in some cases, and it's an easy fix to grandfather them in. Doesn't mean that the legislature is going to do it.
Or why didn't they roll this out? I guess with. Like, first of all, we don't have legislation that says how they would do this. We're waiting for an advisory today that basically says, hey, if your license is up, because that's the other problem. In a couple of weeks or by the end of the year, some of these businesses are up for renewal of their 2-year license. So they're wondering, okay, what happens?
They're not going to get renewed.
They're not going to, no, right. Office of Cannabis Management already said, you're not getting renewed if you're on this list. So my question was, well, do they have to shut down? No, they don't have to shut down. Okay, but they're going to be operating with an unlicensed. They're going to be an unlicensed storefront, which. Okay.
Well, we had unlicensed storefronts for years. These,
right. I mean,
unlicensed weed shops,
and they're still open, and you can still find them on Google. But that's another story. But you know, the other question is, okay, say for example, the state comes out with something that says, here's a grace period for you to operate without a renewed license for X amount of time. And they put that out and say you can do that until the legislature acts. What about the bank because weed is not legal on the federal level. It's still on that list of prohibitive products, right? So banks who are even, banking with these companies, with these businesses, already taking a risk and already charging more than they would charge with a regular business. What about mortgages on locations? What about people that, they're getting their product from? And their credit line, like it really impacts so many other parts that I don't think the state really figured out when they just dropped a bomb and said, hey, you're gonna have to move.
Bobby, I'm going to give you the last word on this since you are. I know Bern is.
I think Bern's the expert.
I mean, Bern's the expert. You are, but you were our weed expert for so long. So, what do you? I mean, are there political ramifications beyond what Bern is talking?
Well, I think the state has to do something. I mean, it's absurd to let this happen and to let all these small business owners to go under. But, I mean, like you said, the entire rollout has been botched. The number of illegal shops that were open in the city for so long, which, by the way, I said on this podcast for like 2 years that if the mayor managed to shut down all the illegal shops, it would be like a huge coup and he could help, it would help him win re-election, which I don't really think he did. I mean, they did shut down a lot of them, but I don't think the mayor's even really taking that much credit. I have heard him mention it, but I don't think he's getting that much credit for it. But it's just been one thing after another, and the fact that we're here 4 years later and
still messing up,
and we still have these like disastrous missteps.
Again, it's like, why would you open up a business in New York State if this is what the risk is? When again, they've really gone through all of these different obstacles, and now here's where they are. And again, one thing lastly I asked was,
I thought I got the last word.
Yeah, I don't think.
Well, you didn't mention this, so I have to ask. I have to do it. I asked, was there a lawsuit that was filed over this discrepancy? No. Was there the threat of the lawsuit? No. I mean, that's what they say. But the governor's office has known about this for at least 4 weeks, maybe longer than this. And this is only coming out now, and this is how businesses are finding out. So that's a huge problem.
Okay, that's going to leave it do it for this week's episode. You can always watch us on Inside City Hall Monday through Friday at 7. And we love your feedback. Send us an email at yourstoryNewYork1@charter.com. I tried to think of like a quick weed pun to say at the end, but I don't know how.
Last week we were trying to do gambling puns.
Well, no, but there's got to be a good weed pun.
You don't work for the New York Post.
That's,
you can't do it.
The whole thing went up in smoke.
They wrote, their lead was, what are they smoking? So I don't want to plagiarize them. Okay.
You can. You should give them credit.
All right, we're done. Subscribe to Off Topic wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you're hearing, leave a review. Thanks to our producer, Anthony Roman. You probably didn't like my tangent. That's fine. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.